But Minister, you were in charge of housing through those previous years. Why now should Canadians listening tonight trust that a new agency will do what you were unable to do?
We are witnessing one of the biggest media coups in Canadian history, in modern Canadian history. And I'm seeing a lot of people fall for it. I'm getting emails about it, but that is exactly the goal. And I'm going to show you with evidence why you should be fiercely and fearlessly pushing back against it. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video. Even the media is starting to get really fed up with this. Vassy Kapelos basically vaporized the Liberal talking points, calmly, of course, with a smile on her face and nothing but facts. Because, I mean, let's be real here. When somebody has to repeat the same thing over and over and over again to you, they're not informing you. They are conditioning you. And you should be asking yourself why. What is the end goal? Because the truth, it only needs to be said once. It rings a little bit differently, if you've ever noticed that before. Mark Carney, on the other hand, he's been making fun of Canada's biggest industry. Liberals are squirming, and CBC, my goodness, watch them try so hard to cut to commercial the second a guest starts being honest.
How much more we learned about the actual day and how things were unfolding. The Politico article comes out. According to Chris D'Entremont, he just told CBC News that Andrew Scheer and Chris Walkerton barged into his office. They pushed the assistant aside and asked him, "What kind of snake are you?" He said in that interview that they didn't ask him, "Hey, has something gone wrong here? Is there a way we can repair this?" It was just very aggressive.
You know, it's kind of funny. CBC, because they are federally funded, they do have to adhere to some things, and they do actually have a web page that you can go on that is all of their corrections, from residential school graves to this story in particular. But the thing about that is really harmful is, in essence, you could go on CBC and say whatever the heck you want. You could lie through your teeth. And all they have to do afterwards is just issue this little correction on this webpage that nobody even really knows exists. And in this one, it says, in a previous version of this story, Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont told CBC News that Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer and Party Whip Chris Warkentin pushed D'Entremont's assistant aside. D'Entremont has since clarified to CBC News that the Conservatives pushed open the door to his office, almost knocking over his assistant, who was presumably behind the door, who presumably they didn't know was even in the room. The headline and article have since been updated, but that's not changing the story or the rhetoric. If you go online, if you talk to people, everybody just remembers the most shocking part, where Chris D'Entremont said that they assaulted his assistant, where they came in with force and just started calling him names. And, you know, frankly, from Chris D'Entremont's perspective, if you are already in a very heightened emotional state because this story broke while you were at work and you hadn't told anybody in your caucus already, you are probably going to be interpreting absolutely everything that happens from there on out in a very different lens than what actually occurred. You may also be inclined to share that publicly, as Chris D'Entremont has done, to make the Liberals like him even more, because this was very self-serving. And it like, to me, truly, the fact that he goes and does this whole big media thing about how, oh, they were just such a bad party. Were they really? Because you were actually just with them in late September. You posted about it quite favorably, actually. And haven't you ever noticed how all coverage like this is so unbelievably biased and leans towards vilifying and shaming center-right, center, or fully right-wing politicians in some democracies and in some other countries? Like, that is really significant. Why is that? Why do they want you to feel a type of way? You know, as an example of this globally, BBC, their boss and head of the news, has resigned after facing criticism because they edited Trump's January 6th speech. Why did they need to do that? Couldn't they have just played the speech in full.
But, you know, at the same time, this is a lot of he said, she said kind of scenario, very gossipy. And I think that in some respects, it almost feels like the Liberals want, like, notwithstanding what your previous interview stated, it seems like the Liberals would prefer that we chat about the intrigue within the Liberal caucus than the deficit and the budget. And I think that's an interesting strategy on the part of the Liberals to be really emphasizing and allowing D'Entremont to even be doing these interviews. I mean, what's in it for them is sort of the question I always think in the back of my mind.
We are watching one of the largest media-driven narrative operations in modern Canadian history. Every single outlet suddenly rolled out a synchronized talking point of Poilievre is dangerous, Conservatives are imploding. Mark Carney's really stable, though. But you know what's interesting is a stable government doesn't actually need to be trying to recruit other people, especially so openly. Like, listen to this from Mark Carney.
One more number before I wrap up. How many seats do you need to have a majority?
I can't remember.
Do you want to answer?
Need a couple.
Just a couple.
Just
All right.
a couple. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
So
Mark
call your local
Carney.
MP
Yes.
if they're not a Liberal and tell them. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
I don't know, like, does that sound like a party who's really confident in what they have, who has a mandate, the way that they try to describe? To me, it reads as a government that is under some serious pressure. Fair enough, you're not a majority, so you don't have the ability to pass key legislation. It could also be part of a larger strategy, though, that while not illegal, is certainly not very democratic and is kind of shady.
Mark Carney did not receive a majority mandate from Canadian voters, yet he's trying to cobble together a majority through undemocratic means with backroom deals and pressure tactics. The only rumors I've heard of intimidation and harassment are from Liberals badgering Conservatives in elevators and calling them at home. All of this is an attempt to distract from Mark Carney's first budget, a terrible budget that is being almost universally panned.
And I can't help but truly find enjoyment in the fact that all of these rumors have been from CBC and CTV sources and insiders, who are all Liberal pundits, by the way. Not a single one of these is coming from a Conservative pundit. They're coming from Liberal pundits, people who worked on Liberal campaigns, who now speak in panels on these shows about the Liberal viewpoint. And one, oh gosh, the pièce de résistance, Sharan Kaur, I think that's how you pronounce it. She publishes this dramatic op-ed claiming that the Conservative Party has this culture of fear with no evidence, no documents, no firsthand experience. And the best part here is that somebody decided to run it through, and turns out that the piece was largely just generated by AI, which is just perfect. An AI written smear piece about a threat that doesn't exist and a problem that isn't real, amplified by legacy media, which is now apparently expert opinion. This is 100% just narrative warfare. And who is the one who started the onslaught of all of this rhetoric? Well, it's a girl who hates Conservatives, who hates the Conservative Party, who hates Pierre and hates Donald Trump. That's pretty evident if you ever scroll through her social media platforms. Pretty clear as well if you ever listen to her when she's on panels. I've actually played clips of her on this show many times in the past. I would describe her as a very pretty, I'll give her that. She's a very pretty young lady who is a radical far left feminist. That's how I would probably summarize her. Very much into the global ideology, wokeism, loves all of that stuff. And I'm saying that as my observations from what she posts on the internet and what she talks about. And somehow that's an expert opinion. I mean, really, whether or not the article was written by AI is the least of my concerns, if I can be honest. The biggest problem is the fact that the article was written and published, and it was just a really big smear hit piece that's not very democratic. I never see anything like that about Mark Carney and the Liberals. If we had that balance, I wouldn't be nearly as upset about this, but we do not have that balance, and it seriously influences and shapes political discourse, public opinion, and election results. And I did find it to be rather entertaining how, while following this story in real time as it was breaking, you had CBC News, oh, we have these credible sources of all of this chaos in the Conservative Party, blah, blah, blah. And that credible source as far as I can tell, was actually just Sharan Kaur. She talked about it a lot. She was posting about it as it was happening. And the next thing you know, there's all of these mainstream outlets of which she's been on their shows. They got the information from her, as far as I can see. If it was a different source, I'd be happy to correct that. But nonetheless, gosh darn, this is who our experts are, according to the media. She wrote, to all the feverish keyboard warriors flooding my DMs and email tonight, it's never about substance. It's my skin color. Nope, pretty sure it is just actually about what you wrote. It's how I look, where I'm from, and now anyone with a brain who can write must be part of some grand plot. Y'all need a new hobby, preferably offline. And then, of course, she doubled down saying that it wasn't written by AI. She can just write, and everybody else is an idiot. So listen, I don't care if it was written by AI or not. That means absolutely nothing to me. The part that means something to me is the impact that this had very strategically. How convenient that is, isn't it? But yes, sure, it's all about your race that nobody cares about. Got it.
Look, I would consider myself a moderate, middle-of-the-road conservative. I think that's my perception amongst my caucus colleagues. I have felt nothing but welcoming and being valued in the Conservative Party, even including from the leader himself, Mr. Poilievre, asking for my advice on a number of occasions, including helping out with the platform. I think we have a very big tent party. That includes considering a wide, varying degree of perceptions and suggestions. We have a saying, Mr. Poilievre often says, you have your say, but you don't always get your way. But we do have a very open policy and able to discuss concerns that people have, and people bring forward concerns about what they're hearing in their communities, about how we can be doing better as a party and providing a better foot forward and solutions for this country, which desperately needs change. We just went through an election where Mr. D'Entremont and a number of other Conservative candidates across this country campaigned and were elected to bring change to Ottawa. So, as I say, I think I'm, disappointed that this is the first time I'm hearing that from Chris.
Man, did she ever want him to shut up? Holy moly. At the end of the day, every single piece of this, and this is a part that nobody's really talking about, like, how weird is it that here we are some months after an election, not even the first year into a new government, and the media from day one has been consistently and constantly emphasizing the opposition. That's really bizarre. That's almost unheard of, that you would focus on beating the dead horse versus focus on the new party that you elected, who you're allegedly so confident in. That's not normal at all. That the media publishes more hit pieces on Pierre Poilievre, who lost the election, than they do critiquing the government in charge and what they're doing. That's really weird. If the Canadian economy were strong, Mark Carney wouldn't need PR campaigns to convince people that the Canadian economy is strong, right? If his leadership were legitimate, secure, and a mandate, as he claims, he wouldn't need to flip MPs. If the media were telling the truth, they wouldn't need to run all of these smear campaigns. They wouldn't need to write potentially AI opinion pieces. And if Conservatives were imploding, the entire system would absolutely not be obsessively trying to destroy them.
And the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. Mr. Carney's solution to that problem is to create a whole bunch of new government programs to redistribute back money that he ultimately took away from families. Well, why not just reverse the damage the government did in the first place? Why not bring down the deficit by cutting bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, corporate welfare, handouts to fake and fraudulent asylum claimants?
So what does this tell us? Because typically, after an election, the media naturally would focus their attention to, I don't know, the new elected government. So they would be talking about cabinet decisions, budgets, scandals, foreign affairs, results, that sort of thing. Opposition is still covered, but it's secondary, right? Whereas in Canada, the focus is inverted, and it has been for a very long time. And there's a lot that we can take away from that because it tells us something. Despite all the noise, all the ways that they want to make you feel Pierre Poilievre is losing support, no, he isn't at all. That's exactly why they are running this on repeat, by the way, because he threatened to defund them. They don't want that. They want to make sure the Liberals stay in power.
One of my questions was, is this pipeline going to come? So
So boring.
it's not actually.
It is.
For,
It is.
for
No,
a
but
big
it
part
is.
of the
It is
country.
because it's. Look, it's. Don't worry. We're on it. We're on it. Like we're on it.
And
But
who's
there is
showing
this
up to
whole
that
world.
party?
Okay, hands up. Who's working on the pipeline in this room? Okay.
Isn't
Right.
that a problem?
No. Look at all the variety. Like, Nav, like, does your, like, we have.
Yeah, if there's more prosperity, they'll get more cell phone services.
But look, okay, so what's going to drive, one of the things with, yeah, don't worry, we're on the pipeline stuff. Danielle's on line one, don't worry, it's going to happen. But, well, something's going to happen, let's put it that way.
Pierre Poilievre lost the election, yet he receives more scrutiny than the people who are actually running the country. That is absolutely absurd. It's hilarious and terrifying. Truly it is. And it's terrifying to see how much it works. But at the end of the day, the media knows that the opposition is more relevant than the government. And the fact that the Liberals are also all on board with allowing D'Entremont to be doing these public appearances to crap on the Conservatives and play into that narrative shows us that they know that too.
And look at all the other things you're announcing that you say will have a material impact, really, I guess, 5 years out or more on Canadians' lives. Don't take my word for it. I look at the analysis from Desjardins, which said if Canadians were hoping for a transformative or generational budget, they will be disappointed with the Government of Canada's budget 2025. The Bank of Montreal, much of the stimulus in the budget consists of measures that were already known, so it is unlikely to cause a sharp revision of economic growth forecasts. The picture in your government is what we're doing here is so unique, you are going to see the economy grow in ways that you haven't before. The Bank of Montreal is saying we're not even going to revise our forecast based on what we saw in this budget.
Well, you look at some of the examples of the game-changing policies that are in the budget, and they may have been announced a month ago, but still form part of the strategy going forward. Take, for example, the new approach to home building. Certainly, I was involved previously with policies designed to help build more homes, but the creation of a federal agency through Build Canada Homes to ensure that the government is able to act essentially as a developer, leveraging all of its tools at once, backed by a $13 billion capital investment, is a different way of doing things that I think is going to have a positive impact, not only on housing outcomes, but on productivity that's going to drive change within the sector, embracing more manufactured homes. It's this kind of different thinking that allows us to take control of the economy here in Canada in a way that people did not feel was under control over the last few years, particularly coming out of the pandemic, that sets this budget apart from many other similar efforts or different policies that have been put forward in previous years.
But Minister, you were in charge of housing through those previous years. Why now should Canadians listening tonight trust that a new agency will do what you were unable to do?
Well, last year, we did move forward with some of the most ambitious housing policies, and you don't have to take my word for it. There's plenty of housing experts who would validate that, that represented the largest housing investments that we've seen in a number of generations. But we have the opportunity to take things a step further without undoing some of the good programs that were put in place previously.
You know what? I'm happy he mentioned housing and all the great stuff they're doing because, here's a fact check.
He said he'd double home building. Now his government agency, the CMHC, says home building will drop by 13% over the next several years. And he said that he would spend less. That was one of his two-word slogans. He was after me for having three-word slogans. His were just two, so he was at least more parsimonious with words. But spend less. Did you see the budget? The deficit is 100% more. He's literally doubled the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind for this year and for the next 5 years. The deficit, as Dan pointed out, this year will be $78 billion, twice the $41 billion that Trudeau had projected, $16 billion higher than Carney promised during the election campaign.
Mark Carney is failing so badly that the media can't sell him, so they have to manufacture fear about the alternative. Again, they've been doing this for many years. The establishment sees Poilievre as the real threat to their power. If he was irrelevant, he would be ignored. And more public support is drifting towards Conservatives even after losing. So the media is trying very hard to suppress that momentum as early on as they possibly can. But what do they want you to believe right now? They want you to believe that he is not the option. Why do they want to get rid of him so bad? Especially too, like, think about this, really. If he was a terrible leader and he needed to be replaced because he's so bad, wouldn't they want to keep him? Because that would mean he'd lose, right? Like, wouldn't that be a good thing? If Pierre Poilievre was a terrible leader, you're going to have all these defectors. Makes perfect sense, actually, to just keep him in power, right? But they don't want to do that. They want the opposite. They actually want you to not trust him anymore, to feel uneasy and weary, to feel like maybe he isn't the guy for the job, despite all polling data showing the complete opposite. And this is also really important. This just came out from Abacus data showing that Gen X is starting to surge to the CPC with 47% support. You do not waste any time or any ammunition on somebody who is done. You just let that fizzle out, right? And you focus on all the amazing things that you're doing so people forget about them. But you do waste a lot of ammunition on somebody who you are terrified of winning the next election. So take that as you will. Try your best not to fall into the narratives. I still support Pierre Poilievre more than ever, honestly. And I still, without a doubt, believe that he can run our country significantly better than any other alternative. And the only reason why they want you to even have that in your brain, maybe it'd be better if it was Michael Barrett. Maybe it should be somebody else. What about Melissa Lantsman? Is because they know that Pierre Poilievre, by the data, by his public support, is literally the only one who can take down the establishment as long as we stop ourselves from falling victim into the uncertainty traps that they are intentionally setting so that he loses what he has built. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below. As usual, there's so much other stuff I wanted to talk about today, and then I got distracted talking about Sharan. Either way, I will be back with you tomorrow. And also, Premier Danielle Smith and I are meeting later today. So I'm hoping to have that episode out for you later this week as well.